So the transfer portal is officially closed and players no longer can enter, but we had some last second entries and some huge commitments that were announced. So in today's video, I'm going over all of the latest updates on the last day of the transfer portal being open. So let's jump into it. And I've got to start with one of the biggest names in the portal, and that's John Blackwell from Wisconsin. And he announced his commitment to John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils. And with this one, Duke didn't just land any normal transfer. They landed a proven bucket in John Blackwell because he's coming off a season where he averaged 19 points and 5 rebounds for the Badgers. And this is exactly what Duke has been missing, which is a true primary scorer for this upcoming season. He can create off the dribble, play off the ball, and close games when needed. And his usage and efficiency profile is elite for a perimeter player. And John Shire beat out the likes of UCLA and Illinois to land John Blackwell, and that is massive. And this is the type of move that should instantly raise Duke's offensive ceiling for next season. But maybe even bigger news is that Tounde Yessoufou from Baylor announced that he is entering the transfer portal, and this might be the biggest late entry in the entire portal because Tounde Yessoufou entered right at the deadline and immediately becomes a top tier available player. He averaged 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals as a freshman for Baylor and was one of the best freshmen in the entire Big 12 last season. And the upside for Yessoufou is absolutely insane. He's an elite athlete and a projected late first-round NBA draft pick, but he definitely is still developing as a shooter. And if he decides to stay in college because he's also going through the NBA draft process, he could be a potential All-American. And I'm expecting every major program that still has some holes on their roster to pursue him very hard. And he's already been linked to Mick Cronin and UCLA, so that is definitely the top school to watch at this time. But another entry into the portal that we got was Malique Ewin from Arkansas, and this one is definitely more strategic than anything because Malique Ewin entered the portal while he's actually waiting on a waiver for his 5th season, but he's one of the guys that I think could actually get that waiver. He averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds, and over a block per game this past season with the Razorbacks while shooting 59% in limited minutes, and so his efficiency definitely stands out. He's a strong interior presence who protects the rim and finishes at a high level, and I do believe a return to Arkansas could happen, but if he does leave, he's going to be one of the more valuable bigs that's available in the portal. And right now, since the portal is thin on some true rim protectors, Ewin's skill set becomes even more important for a lot of high major programs. But one of the biggest winners of the last day of the portal was Mike Malone and North Carolina because they added 2 high-level commitments. And first up, it's Terrence Brown out of Utah, who was one of the best scorers in the portal. Brown averaged nearly 20 points at Utah this past season and thrives attacking downhill with high usage. He's a score-first type of guard who can consistently create offense, which UNC needed badly. And at 6'3", he also isn't necessarily the biggest guy, but playing next to Neoclis of Dallas should help with that. And North Carolina beat out Kentucky and Kansas for Terrence Brown, so that shows you the type of programs that were going after him. And this is definitely a foundational piece for Mike Malone's first roster at UNC, and this move should immediately elevate UNC's offense next season. But the Tar Heels didn't stop there because they also added a commitment from NC State transfer Matt Abel, and with Matt Abel, UNC adds another key piece, and this one is all about versatility there on the wing. Abel is 6'6" and gives you size, shooting, and defensive flexibility. He averaged 9 points as a freshman in ACC play for the Wolfpack and shot over 37% from 3, so the flashes of upside are definitely real. He even dropped 19 points against UNC last season, and now this season with the Tar Heels, he should have a bigger role, and I expect growth from him as a sophomore. And he has the ability to guard multiple positions and space the floor, and to me, he feels like a true breakout candidate who can quickly become a starter for Mike Malone and the Tar Heels next year. But another top transfer announced their commitment, and that's Paulius Murauskas from St. Mary's, and he announced that he will be following his head coach Randy Bennett to Arizona State, and this is one of the most impactful pickups that isn't getting enough attention in my opinion. Paulius Murauskas averaged 18.5 points and 7.5 rebounds there for the Gales last season. He's an elite scoring forward with great feel and can operate in multiple offensive sets. He led St. Marys to 27 wins and was first team all WCC this past season, and his efficiency and rebounding will translate immediately to Big 12 play. And with this one, Arizona State didn't just add another piece for their roster, they added a centerpiece and what looks like a guy that could be all conference in the Big 12 next year. But a team that seems to keep on getting guys out of the transfer portal is Pat Kelsey and Louisville, and they added another one in Alvaro Folguieras, the big man transfer from Iowa. And Folguieras to me is one of the most unique bigs in the portal because he's a stretch four, but what separates him even more is his passing, as he averaged over 2 assists per game at Iowa, and that as a big is rare. He shot over 50% from the field, and that fits perfectly in Pat Kelsey's up-tempo system, and especially his ability to shoot it from deep. And now he'll be playing next to a true center in Flory Badunga there at Louisville, which should allow him to thrive at his natural position, which is the 4 spot, and that's where he has been the most effective, and his role should expand significantly there with Louisville. And to me, Folguieras feels like a system perfect fit here with Louisville and has serious upside to break out even more next season. But sometimes the best wins in the portal are getting your own guys back, and that's exactly what Todd Golden and the Florida Gators just did, as Florida is getting Thomas Haugh back for his senior season, and that alone is massive for the Gators. Haugh averaged 17 points and was trending toward a 4th-round pick in the NBA draft, but decided to return to Gainesville, and his level of production and efficiency is rare to retain. He's athletic, versatile, and already proven in big moments, and from an analytics perspective, his efficiency and scoring versatility both stand out, and this immediately puts Florida in the preseason #1 conversation in my opinion. And in an era of constant turnover with the transfer portal, this kind of retention is a huge advantage for Florida. And don't forget that it gets even better for Florida because Alex Condon already announced he's returning after averaging 15 points and 7.5 rebounds this past season with the Gators, and Rueben Chinyelu announced that he is testing the draft waters but could still return because he's maintaining his eligibility, and if he does return to college basketball, it will be with the Florida Gators after averaging a double-double in a monster year there with Florida. And if the front court stays together like I think it will, it's one of the best in the country yet again, and Florida to me could realistically win their 2nd championship in 3 years this season. But another returner that's worth mentioning is Wisconsin big man Nolan Winter, because Wisconsin keeping Winter is just as valuable as landing a top transfer, and he officially announced that he has signed to come back to Greg Gard and Wisconsin for next season. Winter averaged 13 points, 8.5 rebounds, and shot nearly 57% from the field this past season, and that's elite efficiency for a front court player. He impacts both ends of the floor and plays a physical, consistent style of basketball. And with bringing Winter back, Wisconsin essentially retained a top-level contributor without having to replace him, and that stability matters, especially in a conference like the Big Ten, where physicality and consistency are needed in order to win games. And then Ian Jackson from St. John's also announced that he is going to be returning to Rick Pitino and the Johnnies. And this past season as a sophomore, Jackson averaged 9.5 points in a limited role, but now there is definitely an opportunity for a huge jump in his junior season, especially with the roster turnover in the backcourt, so his usage should increase significantly. His shooting efficiency was solid this past season, and the flashes that we saw suggest some real upside. And now pairing him with a new addition like Donnie Freeman gives St. John's a really strong core, and to me, this was like a breakout season waiting to happen from Ian Jackson. But another commitment that we got was Sebastian Williams-Adams, who entered the portal from Auburn as soon as they signed Thomas Dowd, and he already announced his commitment in less than 24 hours to another SEC school in the Vanderbilt Commodores, and this is a very high upside defensive addition for Vanderbilt because Sebastian Williams-Adams brings versatility at 6'8" with the ability to switch across multiple positions. He's an elite athlete who thrives as a cutter and passer and has very strong defensive instincts, and his offensive game is definitely still developing, especially the jumper, but the tools are still there, and Vanderbilt right now looks like they're building a physical identity, and SWA fits perfectly with that. And if his offense comes along in his sophomore season, this could be a major major pickup for the Commodores. But Auburn added another transfer of their own in Adam Olsen from South Alabama, and Olsen is one of the best shooters that was available in the portal. This past season, he averaged 16.5 points and shot nearly 40% from 3 on high volume and made over 100 threes over the course of last season. And that kind of shooting changes everything offensively, and he should provide spacing, scoring, and size on the wing. And his high volume shooting is one of the most valuable traits you can add, and that's something that every team can use. And this is exactly what Auburn needed in order to elevate their offensive ceiling. Another team that's been very active in the portal is Providence, and they added another transfer with Malik Mack from Georgetown. And Mack averaged 13.5 points and over 4 assists with the Hoyas this past season, so gave them both scoring and playmaking. And that balance is critical in the Big East and should be a big part of Providence's team next season, as he can run the offense, create for teammates, and still score efficiently when needed. And to me, I don't think Mack is just a depth piece for Brian Hodgson in the Friars. I think he's going to be a real contributor next year, and Providence is quietly putting together a team that could compete near the top of the Big East Conference. But Georgia Tech was another team that added 2 transfers on the last day of the portal being open. And first up, it's Colby Garland. And Garland was one of the most underrated scorers in the country this past season, as he averaged 20.5 points and 4.5 assists and showed both scoring and playmaking ability. And even on a weaker team, his efficiency and production stood out. And now that he's in a better situation there with the Yellow Jackets under Scott Cross, those numbers could translate even more. And Georgia Tech gets a true league guard with Colby Garland, and he can create offense at a high level. And this is definitely going to be a major upgrade for their backcourt. But another guard that they just got was Nasir Whitlock from Lehigh, and Georgia Tech is definitely doubling down on these 2 guards. He averaged over 20 points and shot 44% from 3 there with the Lehigh, which is elite efficiency. And Whitlock is a true scoring guard who can stretch the floor and create his own shot. And pairing him with Garland gives Georgia Tech one of the most explosive backcourts in the country, and this is a huge offensive boost and could completely change this team's identity for next season. And the last transfer portal pickup I want to mention is Kyle Evans, who is signed with NC State, and this might be the most impactful defensive addition out of the portal. Kyle Evans led the NCAA with 3.5 blocks per game last season, while also averaging 12 points and nearly 9 rebounds, and that's elite production on both ends of the floor. And he's not just a rim protector, because he's efficient offensively, as he shot 62% from the field last season at UC Irvine. And NC State now with Kyle Evans has a true defensive anchor who changes how opponents are going to look at attacking them. And this is the type of addition that can elevate an entire defense instantly, and Justin Gainey looks to have gotten a very underrated player here in Kyle Evans. But that wraps it up for this transfer portal update. Let me know your thoughts on all the latest additions and news in the comments down below, and make sure to stay tuned, as there are still a lot of uncommitted players, and I'll be sure to cover wherever they end up. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.